But it's kind of ironic that, when I reached out, I also reached out to Nanette and Calder to see if they'd like to be part of this, before I reached out to the cast. Mm-hmm. And Nanette responded that, I love Nick. He was one of my very favorite English students, but no, I won't be on the
podcast.
She was a great teacher. Yeah. And I didn't know that she was affiliated with the theater now.
Are we on? Are we going?
Yeah, we can go right on.
Okay. So speaking of Nanette, we'll start out with that. Nanette used to run Redwood Curtain Theater, since we're talking about theaters. And Redwood Curtain lost their lease 2 years ago?
No, it was last year.
Was it only last year?
It was,
It was early last year then.
Mm-hmm. Book of Will had just finished, which I worked on.
Oh, I didn't know you were in
I assistant stage managed that show.
Okay. Yeah. So they had lost their lease because they did not own the building. And they were looking to get a new building, and NCRT, the theater that I've been usually working with, North Coast Repertory Theater, the pool for local community theater financially in this area is not deep. And for RCT, Redwood Curtain Theater, to find a new location would have probably pulled out whatever resources there were, and they still wouldn't have had a building, and we would still be struggling. So Calder and Nanette and the boards and everybody got together. Calder, who was running our theater, said, let's combine. And we started just the beginning of this year, didn't we? Mm-hmm. Yeah, beginning of 24. Mm-hmm. And we combined. We're not officially one thing. I don't think legally we are. But we work together like a family, I guess you could say, which has its own family dynamics at times, different ways that people do things. So Nanette now handles, for the most part, the creative side of the plays. She's the person who the directors all report to, like I am right now. Calder is still there, but he's become very proficient at finding funding sources and handling the, shall we say, political side, the financial side. And then there's a staff of which I am, that we've got the Director of Public Experience, which is a fancy name for top house manager. That's me. And we've got somebody who handles back of house. That's Kelly. So she's a stage manager. Brian handles technical. So we're now the management team. And Nanette is the one who oversees the production of all the plays, who was your teacher.
How funny is that?
Yeah,
great teacher.
Yeah.
Was that a difficult merger? I remember reading about that back when it was all going down.
What about from your side? You were at RCT. Did you have any feedback on it?
I mean, I was very grateful that I got to actually be a part of that theater in the space that they were in on the last show that they did there. But I don't know that I have much of a picture of what it really looked like. I do think the way that I seem to understand it, but maybe I'm wrong about this, is that the theaters still want to try to have their own identities. Yeah. Like, even though it's a shared space, Redwood Curtain does the types of productions that they like and that they have historically, focused on, and NCRT does the same. And I think there was probably some, just like you said, sort of family dynamics. When you're moving in with people, you're having a new roommate, things got to get ironed out, and so it's like working together to keep those identities alive and real and distinct, but come together and find the places where things just merge.
Yeah, and the dynamics in the two, like, I'm the person, when I'm not I happen to be directing the games Afoot, but when I'm not doing that, I'm responsible for the ticket sales and the getting the volunteers and the house managers and all of that. And there is a definite difference in the way that RCT works versus NCRT. And it's going well, but it's like, oh, we didn't used to do it that way.
Just trying to figure out how everything meshes together.
Yeah, because we were each independent beings. And we decided the reason we changed the name of NCRT to Fifth and D Theater was kind of, as Rachel referenced, it's like, well, let's move in together and we'll move into my house, but it'll be our house. And it's like, well, it's not really our house. It's your house that I'm living in. And Fifth and D Theater allowed us to put a umbrella over both theaters. And so it's Fifth and D Theater with NCRT and with RCT, and 3 shows a year that we do 6. We do 6. Math is not my strong suit. We do 6. That just reminded me of a shtick we can do for Martha when she says, I took 4 sleeping pills. I took 4 sleeping pills, which we can talk about.
Seeing double.
I took 4 sleeping pills. But they do 3 big shows a year. We do 3 big shows a year. And then there's a lot of other smaller shows that fit in. And so this particular show that brought you and I here together this time is The Games Afoot, which is an NCRT production. And summed up, it is and you guys need to memorize this as much as I have, a Sherlock Holmes festive holiday comedic murder mystery romp.
Oh, wow.
So that's what it is. And Rachel is in the cast.
Yes, I am.
Rachel plays, you want to tell about who you play?
I played Daria, arguably the villain of the play. She's the theater critic. So, that's the enemy of of the actors, I guess. And it's very fun to get to do all the villain stuff. She's got the classic, she yells at everybody. She contacts the dead. She tries to seduce somebody. You know what I mean?
Tries to pretty much seduce everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's very fun to play.
Yeah.
And Dan is our
Creative
director.
Yeah.
So
kind of helped come up with the concept of the set design, the lightings, the costume, and just kind of the feel of the whole overall production.
Yeah. And he has the same last name as me because he's my son.
Yeah, I got the same middle name as his first name. So.
That's right. Yeah. We've been putting this play together. It opens November 15th. It'll run for a month. And either one of you want to describe the basic concept of the plot?
Yeah, I guess William Gillette, who is our star of the show, is a star of stage and screen in the 30s. He's really well regarded for his personification of Sherlock Holmes, which he wrote a show of that's been produced for 20 years on Broadway. Not to ruin the beginning, but something incites the story for William Gillette to have to solve a murder. And that's basically kind of where I want to go with it. And there's some Sherlock Holmes fun in there, a lot of Christmas holiday fun, little sex, a little intrigue. It's got everything in it. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are working through a lot of themes in this play.
Yeah, it's got a lot going on. And William Gillette, as it turns out, was a real person. The play is not about him for real, but he's... he used to write Sherlock Holmes plays. And how many did he do? It was like 1,300.
It was a ton. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
1,300.
He played Sherlock Holmes 1,300 times,
Yeah.
is what Steven said.
Oh,
Steven
wow.
Santos is the local actor who plays William Gillette in this show.
Yeah. So it's based on a real guy who was like a Sherlock Holmes aficionado. He would be like a Sherlock Holmes cosplayer, I guess. But he was on Broadway for years and years and years. So Ken Ludwig, who wrote this play, which won an award, used William Gillette. And then there's a murder mystery. It takes place at a Connecticut mansion. And how did we describe, when we were first getting going, what was the women who we wanted you modeled after from?
Oh, the kind of references that Scott gave me was like Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada and Cruella de Vil, which the one that I sort of picked of the different Cruella iterations was the Glenn Close live action Cruella and Lucille Bluth from Arrested Development. So
Wow.
it's a really funny combination. The whole show is very funny. I mean, like they've both described, it's a group of actors who do a murder mystery in a murder mystery. So there's lots of fun stuff to play with
Yeah,
there.
it seems like you have a lot of free reign in that.
Yeah, there's a play within a play. And then there becomes a murder mystery to have to solve. And nothing is as it appears, as would always be the case in a murder mystery. And there's a lot of shtick. I'm really fortunate. Not only is the cast brilliant, and Daniel he calls himself Dan, but Daniel and my stage manager Katie have got lots of great ideas. I kind of look at myself more as I get to be the bottom end of the funnel where all these ideas get pouring in. But the area I think I'm strongest in is the shtick. So we've got kind of like a monkey throws enough crap at the wall and some of it sticks. So it's like, let's try this. Let's try this. Let's try this. That one worked. That one worked. So it will be, if we do what we're going to do well, and I'm confident we will, the audience will walk out of there laughing a lot. They will have just a really good time. From every one of the scenes, there's a seance in it. Like I said, there's a murder that takes place in it, because nothing is funnier than a murder. Especially around the holidays.
I think that's what everybody wants, right?
Yeah, let's go celebrate the holidays by having a murder. But it's great fun. I appreciate the publicity that we're getting, and so what can we tell you about it? What would you like to know? Ask any of us. We'll answer questions.
Well, I think for you, are you going to be acting in this as well?
I am not.
Okay.
I am the only one who is not this time. And I really, to be honest, I love being on stage. Pintaro was a real eye-opener for me about, I had always done kind of silly, I had done some drama, but it was basically comedic. And then in Pintaro, where I played Ziggy Rosen, which was, I think, one of the other actors in Pintaro, said, I just vomited emotion all over the stage. I learned how much fun I have doing that. And since then I did It's a Wonderful Life and then Potato Gumbo at the Exit Theater. And I really like being on stage. When I was offered the chance to direct this, there was a part of me that I think up probably until about July of this year was going, well, if I can find somebody who was willing to cast me in it and they'll be the director, but there's no role for an old guy in it. So there's an older woman in it, but I couldn't quite make the leap that far. So I decided I'll direct it. And it's fun. It's a lot of time. The good news is, for me at least, once the play starts, they're working and I get to stop. But I'll probably be there anyway.
I think you would have made a really hilarious Martha. Particularly Stevens Martha. That would have been a hoot.
Martha's the older woman who's played by Willie Welton, who has been around for a long time. Who else do we have in the cast? We've got obviously Rachel, who plays Daria. We have got Willie Welton, who plays Martha. We've got Moss. How do you pronounce his last name? Nipkow?
Nipkow, I think.
Yeah, I think it's Nipkow.
Mm-hmm.
He plays Felix, who's Gillette's best friend. Stephen Santos plays Gillette, Sherlock Holmes' character. Moss's real-life wife, Janine, plays the inspector. And who am I missing? Amadeus plays Simon, who's the younger actor who is involved with Cody Holper, who plays Aggie. And so there's all these back and forths with all the different characters.
And then Kate. Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then Kate. Yes, exactly.
Who plays Madge.
Yeah, Kate, who plays Madge. So it's a great cast. If you've gone to any local theater, you've seen these people. They've been doing it for, I would say, for years, but I don't think Amadeus is old enough to have been doing it for years yet.
No, 12th Night, I think, was his first
was
thing.
It really?
Since school. Yeah.
Okay. And he's, 23, I think.
He just turned 21.
Oh, yeah, he just turned 21.
He just turned 21. He did.
So he's probably the youngest member of the cast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So now, working in a smaller market like this, do you guys have a pretty standard rotation of actors that are just around that you can bring in, or is it a bigger pool that you're selecting from?
I think there's more people that want to act than there's room for. Older characters don't have as much. And I don't think men have as much, but you're a woman.
I'm also relatively newer to the area. I started acting here last year. But yeah, I think there is a really solid base of community theater actors in the area. And we also have the benefit of the Del Arte community in Blue Lake that provides like a whole other, creative source to tap into. I think, I don't know, from the perspective I have, I think that like if there was more opportunity to get more people involved, we could get more people involved. But you do tend to see similar faces in auditions. which is awesome. Just like get to know your community, get to know like these people who are really involved. Like Moss is super involved and has been in Humboldt County Theater for like 15 years or something.
He was in Southern Humboldt for the longest time.
Yeah, really long time.
And on the other hand, his wife, Janine, is relatively new to this, but she does a killer, no pun intended, job as the inspector. Yeah, doing the auditions was really difficult because I've developed a lot of friends in the community, and the cast is 8. And of course, it's 8 based on gender and age too. So it's not like, oh, just put 8 people. You know, like I said, I couldn't play Martha. And what I was hoping for is my 8 friends would show up, all perfectly set for the auditions. And I go, great, we're all going to do a play together. And unfortunately, there was about 35, 40 people. Yeah,
35, 40 people.
Who showed up, of which I knew probably 25 to 30, and having to make the sad calls, as I said, so Dan sat next to me and was like, all right, God, I really would love to have you in the play, but we just, as a matter of fact, Rachel was one of those calls.
Wondered if that was going to come up. I won't volunteer it, but.
No, that's part of what it's like.
Yeah. I was not originally cast in this show, but just happens to have worked out that now I am, and I'm super glad that I am. Really, totally thrilled. I'm all credit to Scott and Dan.
That was the toughest call, honestly.
Yeah, that really was. I hated that call. God, I hated that call.
What's the backstory there?
Oh.
So Rachel had auditioned, and since the news came out that the Games Afoot was going to be, it's the holiday play, that we were just coming off the end of one of our most successful plays at NCRT ever, Sweeney Todd, which was 5 weeks. We usually only do 4. 5 weeks, live band, 18-person cast, full production. The set was amazing.
Yeah, shout out to Nan and Isabel and Sean for that. They knocked it out of the park. I mean, that was an incredible show.
Yeah, it was a Broadway production, for all practical purposes, and Nan was the director. And so we're coming off the tail end of that, but a lot of people had been approaching me all year long because we announced what the plays are going to be like in December, and then who the director's going to be. And originally I was asked to direct a play in March of this year, so 8 months ago. I was going to direct Laughter on the 27th Floor. I think that's what it's called, which is a Neil Simon comedy about a bunch of comedy writers. Kind of like it was, if I remember correctly, the premise for the Dick Van Dyke Show, which was about a bunch of comedy writers. And then the merger took place, and so Calder said, well, we'd rather you do the Games Afoot. So from the time the Games Afoot was announced, I've been had like lots of my friends coming up saying, oh, I'm going to audition. And I was a little nervous about it because I'm not good at saying no to people. I don't like doing that. So Rachel we had worked together in Pintaro, and she said, oh, I'm going to audition. And a lot of people who said they were going to audition didn't. So I was like, okay, that's good. Makes it easier for me. But Rachel did. And she really wanted the role of Daria, this evil sorceress type. I mean, she's not a sorceress, but, kind of a
supernatural.
Yes. That's the word. Succubus, I think would be the word. And
everybody wanted to be Daria, apparently. Yeah. I mean, Scott knows better than me about that, but apparently that's what everyone put on their audition sheet. I want to be Daria.
They all wanted to be the villain. And there was another woman who was cast, it was between Rachel and this other woman. And I just, this other woman was specialized in comedic physical comedy, which is something that there's a scene that we haven't even yet rehearsed that is going to put Rachel through the ringer. I mean, dragging across the floor, flopping, all over the place, all sorts of stuff.
Don't say much more than that.
Yeah, I won't. But it's a comedic, very funny scene. And so I said, I just got to give it to her. And Rachel called me back a couple of times and said, if there's any way that this falls apart, I said, if there's any way, but, and as you know from our past talks, I believe in a philosophy that is you put into the universe what you want, and then it comes back to you. So I called Rachel, I think like 2 days later and said, do you believe in religious science? And she said, well, what's that? And I said, oh.
Yeah, the science of the mind.
Yeah, science of the mind.
That's the first thing he said to me. I got on the phone He was like, "Good morning, Rachel. Do you believe in the science of the mind?" And I was like, "No, I don't know."
What is that?
Yeah.
But the other actress decided that she wanted to take another role. And it was like, great, now I can offer it to Rachel. And Rachel slid right in and has been doing it since then. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about shouting out, but I'll anonymously shout out. She's also
she's
a fantastic actress.
Yeah, she really is.
She's so cool.
I don't think it would be a problem with saying who she is.
That's really up to you, I think.
I'm not going to say her name.
Okay.
She's great.
Yeah,
Right,
but she's wonderful. She's a local actress,
Yeah.
and I've worked with her a couple times. She's really good.
Yeah.
Like, she would have done an amazing job. I'm just grateful that I get to fill in her shoes.
Yeah.
I'm happy with the Daria we have now.
Yeah, so am I, very much so. And so that's how the cast came about, was, calling people saying, no, you can't do it. And then we have to narrow it down and put everybody in place. And one of the other decisions I made is there were some other people who I wanted to have in the cast, two people in particular, one especially who I've worked with before, and they were really wanting the role. And I had in my mind this person for the inspector. From the time I started reading the play, it's like, oh, this person would be the perfect inspector. But there was another play that was right before ours at Ferndale Rep. What was the play? Blythe Spirit, yeah. And Blythe Spirit had done casting, and some of the people who were auditioning for the games Afoot were also cast in Blythe Spirit. So to the point of wanting to spread the wealth a little bit and not wanting to be in competition with rehearsals, I decided anybody who was in Blythe Spirit, as good as they were, I just wouldn't have them, which meant everybody who is in this play is only in this play right now. So they're fully dedicated to the play. But that was a conscious decision.
It's probably a good choice.
Yeah.
That way you're not splitting your focus. You can just...
And spread the wealth. There's not enough roles to begin with. So I'd rather have more actors have roles than fewer actors have several roles. It just seemed more fair. So that's part of the way the cast, it's a really talented cast. And there was one other role that was supposed to go to somebody else, but the person had left town during callbacks. And so we needed somebody to fill in who was I was considering anyway. And he did a killer job and he got the role. So I had to call back somebody else it's like, I hate that part. Once the cast was in place, it's fun.
That's got to be challenging, just figuring out who's going to be in alignment with the character you envision and having to tell people you care about, I don't know if this is the one that's going to work out.
Yeah. And Dan and I sat there at his house one morning with all the sheets in front of us and saying, all right, this person definitely has to be this role. Like some people, it was just immediate, that person, that role, without a doubt. And then others, there were like 3 or 4 people who could fill the role. So it's like, now what do you do with it? And then making the phone calls. Well, Dan stood there and said, are you going to call him? I said, yeah, I'm going to call him. Here we go. And you get the sad call. You do the happy calls first because you got to first see if they can do the roles. So that's fun. It's like, hey, I got a role I can do it. Okay, wonderful. Then you have to call back all the other people and say, I don't have anything for it. I'd rather do the sad ones first, but that's just...
You got to make sure.
Yeah, I got to make sure.
Yeah,
otherwise I got nobody.
Do the sad ones first and then call the characters and say, oh, no, actually, I can't do this. I have time conflicts or whatever.
Yeah. So Rachel, I wanted to work with, so she was going to be my stage manager at first. And then we were able to slide her into Daria. And then so somebody else who I was sad that I couldn't cast, I immediately called back and said, I got a stage manager. And that's Katie. And she was, oh, I'd love to be a stage manager. So
yeah, it worked out pretty good for you, right?
It did. I would have been absolutely delighted, and I would have worked very hard to be a great stage manager for Scott and Dan, for sure. No matter what, I would have been totally happy to be a part of this production. It's just such a fun show that, I wouldn't want to just pass up an opportunity. Yeah. I don't think there was any other role that I would have felt that I could have done better than anybody else who was at the audition. The people who got cast were right for it, But yeah, it would have been just being involved in a different way, which would have been totally great too. And I have done some stage managing. I have experience doing that. But yeah, I mean, I can't say that I'm disappointed about the way that it worked out. And I definitely come around to the science of the mind for
Starting
sure.
to rub off.
Yeah.
Got another convert.
Really starting to believe that, you know, if you say what you want, you speak up for yourself, you say like, you know, this is how I actually really feel. You just have to let somebody receive that. And like, that's good enough. You've communicated what you need to communicate. And then you take what you get. And I think I've really tried to take what I got here and really put my all into it. So
one more into the fold. Yeah. And to the point of, you know, Dan, speaking of the science of the mind, one of the other things that I wanted to do this year is I wanted to work with both of my sons. And Dan has lived up here
2 years, a little over 2 years.
A little over 2 years now with his wife. And my other son had some issues and was living in Texas. The issues aren't that he was living in Texas. That's just an add-on. He hasn't been up here in
2018.
Yeah, since 2018. So there was some fracturing within our family. And in 2003, I got started in acting because of Dan. At Ferndale Rep.
Ferndale Repertory, yeah.
Yeah, Ferndale Rep. Stalag 17.
Forget the name of the character. I was the
you were one
messenger character, yeah.
One of the prisoners in Stalag 17.
Yeah, I was one of the soldiers, yeah.
Yeah, and he came home one day, and at that point I was in my, I don't know, about your age actually then.
Yeah, probably.
Said, you know, we need a guy to play a character. He's got to be an old man. You know, again, I'm in my 40s at that point, but he says, you want to do it. So that was my first play. I played Geneva Man at Ferndale Rep with Dan was one of the
Yeah,
actors.
again, I think his name was Marco was the character's name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there was a local director who has sadly moved away and passed away, Joel Agnew, who was here for a long time, who was about to do a play at the North Coast Repertory Theater. And it was Lost in Yonkers, and he needed two young men, boys basically, teenagers, and their Jewish father. And I was raised Jewish. My practice is, like I said, science of mind. But he lived 3 doors away. And he walked over to our house and said, I want to cast your sons and you in Lost in Yonkers. So we did. That was in 2003. So all 3 of us worked together. And that was one of my favorite memories. And I thought it would be really fun to do it again. So as it turns out, Brandon, my other son, is going to be moving up to Canada. And on his way up to Canada is living in Humboldt for several months. And he will be on the play, so it'll be Dan, myself, and Brandon working together again.
Yeah, he'll be doing the lights and soundboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they were both actors also. I had never had any interest in it. And then after I did Lost in Yonkers, I did Moulin Scrooge with Brandon, because Dan had moved away by that point. And then was on the road for 20 years. So this will be a fun thing.
Full circle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll be together on a project again.
All working together again.
Yeah.
Much older, much wiser.
Yeah, something like that, right?
Yeah.
and directing now.
Yeah, I know. Directing is very different.
Yeah.
It's
This isn't your first one directing, though, is it?
I directed a play at the Exit Theater, which is a small theater in Arcata. They had the one-act festival during the summer this year, and I was in one of the one acts, and I directed another one called 2 Yards of Satan, which was about a seamstress who orders 2 yards of satin at a – oh, you directed one too, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Who orders 2 yards of satin at a fabric store, but misspells it and ends up with a 6-foot-tall Satan showing up at her door. And it was a documentary.
And wasn't that Moss too?
That was Moss.
Moss was Satan, right?
Moss played Satan. Janine, his wife, played the police officer. And then Jay and their guy, Chris, played the seamstress, and Hot Jesus, which was the other character in it. So that was my first real directing. But that was how long were those plays? About 10 minutes?
Yeah, like I think the general brief for the short play festivals is supposed to be like 10 to 15 minutes.
Yeah. And was that your first directing too?
It was, yeah. That was, I felt like Scott and I had a moment where we bonded a bit about that we were on the same weekend.
Yeah, because the play had different plays on different weekends.
Right.
And her play, which was...
My play was called What You Did Say, and it also featured some members of our cast in this show. Steven Santos was in there, and Amadeus Brown, and also featured Stefan Chittenden and Wojtek Czyż. And Scott and I were on the same. There's 2 weekends of the Short Play Festival, and it's a set of 6 plays per weekend, and we both directed for the first time this summer, which was a totally different experience than acting. Very different when you, at least from my perspective, when you act. I mean, you're always all working together to try to create the vision of the story. And everybody has a part to play in that. But when you're an actor, you have your perspective on your character, and you are trying to bring to life who you think that character is, but within the grander vision, within the bigger picture of the director and what they see the show to be. And then when you're the director, you're the one who is orchestrating the vision. So it's a very different process. And Scott and I both got to taste that this summer. Mine was more dramatic. Scott's very funny.
Yeah. Again, a farce. Total farce.
Super funny. Really, really funny stuff. And it's a really, that festival is something special. It's the second one they've done up here, but the Exit Theater in San Francisco, run by Christina. I don't know how to pronounce her last name.
I don't either. And I consider her a good friend of mine. Aguero?
Agello? I don't know. Okay. I'm so sorry, Christina. But she's fantastic, and she has run theaters in San Francisco for years, and she moved here, and so now we have an Exit Theater up here, and I hope to continue to be involved in the Short Play Festival for a long time, because it's short works from playwrights who submit from all over, and they also specifically create an opportunity for local writers to submit. Like, they have their own time to submit just for local people, which I think is really cool. And it's a very small space above the mattress store on the plaza.
Which always says big town.
Yeah, totally.
It's a little theater above the mattress store.
Yeah.
On the plaza.
Yeah, but really cool space, and like you're right there with the audience.
More intimate that way.
Oh
Very
boy!
intimate.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's bigger than this room, but maybe it's twice the size.
Yeah, and you like, it feels very different. It feels like you're very much like doing this as a community, not just our Humboldt community, but like this is just for the sake of telling stories and doing theater and like playing with each other. And it's so cool. To get to, taste directing in that type of environment where it's like, it's a lot more low stakes, to be honest. You don't have things like a budget that you have to worry about. You don't really we're not individually responsible for doing like promotion and publicity, and we get the opportunity to see what it's like to create a vision. And that was a really great experience for me.
And there'll be another one in 2025. She solicits, I think, because I got to know her well, because I was in So she did a play at the beginning of this year called Potato Gumbo, which was about a senior center. And there are 2 older couples. I played one of the men of the older couples. And one of the characters, it was, what do you call these? Dramedy, I guess. My love interest in this senior center is starting to go downhill because of dementia. But the play itself, because nothing says humor like dementia, but the play is a funny play. And, with some really poignant moments in it. So I got to know her pretty well, and she played my love interest. So I think the first year, I think she had said they had like 60 or 70 submissions, and the numbers are probably off, but the ratio won't be. And then that was in 23. And in 24, the number of submissions was triple digits. And they go through all of these submissions and they narrow it down to 6.
6 per weekend.
Yeah, so they narrow it down to 12. And I know they had, I want to say the number was like 160. And they got a committee that narrows it down and then produce 6 one-act plays per weekend. Was it just one weekend or did we do 2 weekends?
We do one weekend each.
Oh, so that's what it was. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I got to be in another one that she asked, would you play the Joker? I played a fool with her because we liked working together. But yeah, you talk about the intimacy of that stage. It's a 39.
It's not more than 40 seats in the house.
Yeah, and it's just 2 rows of seats. And there's no stage per se. The seats are on the edge of the floor. So I can't speak for you, but when I do acting, I don't like to see the audience. I mean, I've been in several plays where you break the fourth wall. You relate to the audience. And then in that case, yeah, you want to see the audience. But for the most part, you want to go into this world where you're in your own world. And that's why the lights go dark and you can maybe see the first row. But at least for me, I don't look at the front. It isn't going to work. But in this play, you're standing next to the audience. I mean, in some of my scenes, I was closer to audience members than I am to you. And what are we, about 4 feet away? I mean, I'm literally having to watch that I don't trip over the members. And you see them. You see them reacting. You see them looking at you. You see somebody on their phone. I remember one night somebody was on her phone, and it's like I wanted to pick up the phone and put it away. But we didn't do that. But yeah, I think a director, at least for NCRT, I've said to the cast, Dan is a creative. The way we work is, I guess I'm the name. I don't mean name like I'm the famous one, but the buck stops with me unless I can pass it up to Nan or Calder or somebody. But so Dan has been responsible for the general look, in conjunction with me, Dan and Katie. But I think the role of a director for local theater is more like a producer, because I'm, setting up publicity. We're doing promotions, like in this particular play. If you wear an ugly Christmas sweater or you dress like Sherlock Holmes, you get a free treat. So, little ways to fill the audience. I'm responsible for, again, and I rely on Dan a lot, for the lights, the way the lights are all going to look. It's not just like in a movie where the director would have the actor, or in a big time play, where you've got a whole cast of, or a crew of, I don't know how many people we have. Our crew is 3. Mm-hmm. And although we technically get paid, we're basically all volunteering.
Yeah.
But we got to do everything. Versus if you were at the Mark Taper Forum in LA or something, or a play in San Francisco,
you just outsource it.
Yeah, you got all these
to do the
different
work
people.
for it.
Yeah.
You have a budget to pay all those people too.
There's that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been part of the thing we were just talking earlier about. And our budgets are not big. They're not large at all. And
what are you guys working with for a play like this?
A play like this is probably going to be in the range of about 8,000 to 10,000 for a budget. And of that, you got royalties. So royalties, I think the royalties on this play, I want to say they're $1,200. So there's a significant chunk right there. And then a lot of times when you do a play, not only do you have to pay the royalties, but then the publishing house, I think in this case it's Samuel French, they also require you then buy so many scripts on top of that, because this play has 8 characters, so you have to buy 8 scripts. Of course, you need to have one for the director, the creator, the rest. So you're buying a bunch of scripts, and the scripts are not cheap. I think they're about $15 a piece. So a sizable chunk of your money goes, boom, right out the door when you start. On a musical, the royalties are higher, and you have a band. So it'll probably go up, I would imagine. I haven't done a musical, but I'm in this town, probably 12 to 15,000.
I think Sweeney was around 15 to 16.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Thereabouts. Yeah. And the only way you make money is you butts in seats, you know. So and we charge $20 or $18
For an adult seat, I
20.
believe it's 20.
Yeah, and a student or senior is 18.
Is 18. And then if you come with a group of 8 or more,
There we go.
you get another $2 discount.
Thank you for marketing that.
So everybody, we want everyone, and that's really what our job is to like make sure that we are creating an entertaining place for you to come and like sit in the seats and have a good evening. Like that's what we're there to do, is to get that audience in the door.
And it's a great theater. You guys have
thank
there.
you.
That was my first time down there, was actually for Pintaro.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was great.
Yeah.
I thought you guys had a great setup.
Yeah. It's a really nice theater. It's not as big as the Ferndale Rep, nor do we have the budget of the Ferndale Rep. They've got 200 some seats.
Is it really that much?
Yeah, I think they're 200 seats, and their actors have, what do you call them, hair mics.
Oh, yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Which is the kind of little piece you put over your mouth so that they can be heard in the last rows. Our theater is 100. What are we running right now? I think we're running 112, and it's all projection. And as the actors will attest, and they certainly will after we go through a few more rehearsals, there's me with my hearing aids sitting in the back going, "Can't hear you," because most of the people who come to a play are also older. Yeah. But you said it was your first time. We are still recovering from COVID.
Are you really?
Yeah, I don't mean like we're sick.
I would hope not. That'd be quite an illness.
Yeah. But theaters, I believe Calder said the percentage of local community theaters that closed because of COVID and the wake of COVID, which is still going on, I believe it's 50%. There's a lot of little theaters that have just collapsed. And so when RCT and NCRT got to combine, it was like the best of both worlds. It was like we both get to survive and actually prosper. This year we've been doing really well, filling the seats and full houses and good reviews. I don't think we've had a bad review this year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was that a big reason for the merger? Was COVID and just kind of the fallout from that?
I think it probably precipitated it to some level, but it was RCT losing their lease.
Mm-hmm.
The owners of the building wanted to sell it to somebody else. NCRT, we own our building, so we don't have to worry about that. We only have to worry about a mortgage. But RCT had they rented, and when the building got sold,
What do you do?
Yeah, where do you do? I think the Moulin Scrooge was actually a RCT production back in, the play I talked about, and that was at the back of the Eureka Mall.
Yeah, the old Redwood Curtain Theater.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I did that. There used to be a space in the back of the Eureka Mall.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. That's because you're not old.
Yeah, well, missed out on those days. I would imagine it, in some ways, it would be more beneficial going into an acting or a directing role, having some background in directing. Right? Or, excuse me, going into a directing role, having some background in acting. Do you find that kind of tracks, or is it more challenging because you're seeing it from both sides in that way?
I've heard that it's, that it's controversial, that's a controversial question because, like...
So now we have to kill you.
Yeah.
Is this going to be a part of the play? That's going to be a little added bonus at the end.
But yeah, I've heard, because again, Scott and I have Scott's on his second experience.
Well,
so he's
and I was assistant director for Tartuffe. So I've had 2.5.
2.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've heard that when you're an actor's director, then like there can just be more focus on the acting. And there's, as they can both attest, so many things that go into it that aren't just the acting. But I think understanding acting and understanding what it takes to perform in that way is really useful for actors when the director knows that, when the director understands that, because, it's a very you're, at least for me, you're trying to be who you would be as this character. And obviously there's plenty of things that combine in there. You have to imagine things that you've never experienced before, but they have to, the way that I approach it, very, very personalized, it's a very subjective thing, but that you want to tie it to real emotion and how you really express yourself when you're in these situations, and for that to come across sincere, genuine, like authentic, and you have to feel very safe and comfortable and like supported in that environment to be able to let yourself go and not be like acting. You don't want to actually be acting for people to be able to be like, oh, you're playing pretend. You really want people to buy it and believe it. And so creating an environment with your casting, with your creative team, everything to make a space for the actors to be able to like let go, try things out. If it falls flat, it falls flat, but you're trying shit. Oh, sorry.
No, you can go.
Okay. Okay. What a relief. But yeah, like that's the most important thing for the actors, because they are creating it. Their performance brings it to life. And so I think when your director understands that process, what it's like to inhabit that experience, they can do a lot to create a good environment. And I'd like to highlight Scott in this moment and just say, like, with the casting, with the ability, like, he has given us a lot of freedom to be able to contribute ideas and say, actually, I don't think this, I think this, and oh, can we try this? Can we run that back? Like, creating that creative environment, that safe, comfortable environment where we all get along really well, which helps so much. Scott has done a fantastic job of curating a very healthy, creative environment to work in, for sure. What's your perspective on acting, directing?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said. I think if you've been in the shoes of the person it's leadership and management with an artistic bend to it. That's really all you're doing. Is leadership is how you guide people. Management is how you put together events. And so there's a lot of management about, we got to hit I mean, that's what Dan and I are working on pretty much all the time is, all right, well, we got to have this thing ready. We got to get this thing ready. That's all. And of course, there's a lot of creative. I'll let Dan talk about what he does in a moment. But the leadership, it's easier to lead if you know what the people you're leading are going through. And actors, I'll speak for me, but there's very little that is as frightening and as exhilarating as standing backstage before you go out. It's everybody's depending on you, your other cast members. If you go up on a line, if you lose your line, which we've all done at some point, the other actors have to be able to cover for you. So as a director, you know that all of this is going on in their minds, and what can you do to make it as easy as possible? And my own management style, because I've been in management a long time, and I've said this a million times, is the best managers, in this case, the best director, best directors don't come up with the best ideas. They just recognize them. And Dan and I have had a lot of discussions about this too, because this is really important to me. I can say no to an idea that doesn't work for me or that I don't think fits within the overall image, because each of the actors, although they're looking at the other characters too, they're seeing it from their perspective. And it's my job to see it from the overall perspective. And my job, as I see it, is to give the best damn show that the audience can possibly take. That's my sole objective, is the audience has got to walk out of there going, that was fantastic. So everything I'm thinking of is, how are we going to give the audience a good show? So it's better to hear an idea that I'm going to say no to than to not have an idea that I could say yes to. So I try and encourage the cast, and it's nice to hear that, and I think they've been really good about it. They'll throw out ideas and say, well, we could do this or we could do that. And then hopefully with diplomacy, sometimes I'll say no, but a lot of times it becomes a yes and. And something as simple, like Dan's got a really good eye for this. Part of the granted, he's my son, but he's got a really good eye for seeing the small things. And like one of the things, a specific scene with Rachel and I that we were talking about is she is being mean to somebody, which is her want.
Typical.
in the role. And what's the line about I could
with a wave of the pen, I could make you a star.
And she aims it at one person, Willie, and she's kind of doing it in contempt. Like I could even make you a star. And it's a very powerful line. And then Dan's idea was just like with one hand, do a little like your fairy dust type thing. And it was just that small difference made the look so much bigger. So because you come up with a lot of these ideas, what's going through your head?
Big film nerd myself personally.
That helps, right?
Yeah. I was living in Los Angeles for the last 20 plus years. That's where I met my wife. And I actually had moved down there originally when I was 19 to pursue an acting career. So I worked on a show for a little bit. I do have experience doing extra work and a lot of production stuff. And I really got actually more into my chef's work after that. And so kind of leaned my creativity towards being a professional chef for about 12 to 15 years.
Hence the garlic tattoo.
Yeah, garlic right there. Come from that type of hierarchy. And then when we came back up here, I wanted to be involved in the local theater, not necessarily acting in it, but doing something creative. I'm also pursuing myself as an acrylic artist now. So really trying to push myself away from food. I call myself a recovering chef. More towards the art. And so with the opportunity to do the creative direction with my dad, he kind of gave me a freedom to just kind of give the idea of what I thought it would look like. And the way I kind of went with it was, what do I like seeing in movies? What do I like with the atmosphere in movies I like to watch? I love theater. Again, I used to do theater a lot when I was younger. And what did I like when I saw theater? So whenever I would see like a murder mystery or a Agatha Christie show or something like that, it was those sets that looked like you were walking into an actual house that I always really loved the most. I always thought those were the coolest sets, where you had all the little details on the wall and the doorknobs that move and the candles that flicker. And so that's kind of where my influence came with this show. And then getting ideas. I guess it's kind of a hindrance for me because I've never really done the creative stage direction before. So I kind of come up with ideas. I'm like, let's just do this.
I am flooded with ideas. Yeah, blue sky.
Yeah,
here we go. I said, no, I don't think we can do that.
And so I'll also tell our creative team, the production team, like Kelly, Brian, Calder, Nan, and I'll be like, do these work? You guys have done these shows. Yeah. Like, does this work? And they'll tell me yes or no. And from there, that's kind of where the set has been going. And then same thing with the lights and then with the costumes, I came up with a general broad concept. And then speaking with somebody like Rachel had an idea of what she wanted for her dress to look like. And so we kind of went with mine and her combination. So it made her.
And Megan is our costume designer who contributed greatly to it also. Yeah.
So it's like that type of collaboration is a lot of fun. For me, though, it's being able to just paint a picture. Just on the stage. I really like doing that. And he can work with the actors a lot better than I can. I come from the kitchen, so I'm a little more gruff than certain people can be. So I'm still trying to learn to take that down a notch.
Yeah, maybe soften those edges.
Soften it a little bit. So I'm really good at getting the picture there, So yeah.
And I don't think the average audience person or the average lay person realizes that a play is not just about the actors on the stage. I mean, everything is a character. The costumes, like the costume that Rachel's going to be wearing is just killer.
We haven't even seen it yet. It hasn't even been made yet.
Yeah, hers is being custom made. The others were kind of getting off the shelf, various costumes we've had, but hers is being custom made. So
truly, all of the costumes are, Megan knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
Like, the costumes are so fun. Like,
Daniel came up with the idea.
Much.
Megan puts them together, and then the actors contribute in whatever way.
Yeah, but please keep going with what you're saying, because I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So the costumes, if you go to a play and the people are not dressed the way you expect them, that's going to pull you back out of the play. If the set doesn't look like what you expect it to look like our play takes place in 1936. So Dan and I have done a lot of research as to what 1936 looked like, because neither of us have been there. And, the colors, went online and looked at Sherwin-Williams and what were the most popular colors in 1936. So the set will be based on those colors. Art Deco was still in its heyday. The 40s is when it started to collapse a little bit. But so the play, if we do the set the way we want to, and again, there's budgetary limitations and plus what you can get. Can you actually get a 1936 radio up here, So it's going to be Art Deco to the nines. Of course, the expression to the nines is from 1936 or so. So the way the people speak, like Cynthia Martels, who directed Pintaro, she is going to be coming in to a rehearsal because part of her idea was this takes place in the era of, the great black and white films, where it was more like Blythe Spirit. What were some of the others?
His Girl Friday.
Yeah, Bringing Up Baby, I think, where the repartee back then was very sharp and fast. So we're trying to recreate the sharp conversational style of the movies in the 30s. So we've got that going on. The music when people walk into the theater is a 1936 playlist of songs that were really popular in the 30s. And little things like, we were having a discussion the other night, there's some scene where we thought about doing high fives. High fives weren't around in 1936, and Daniel being a film buff and me paying attention to this stuff when I watch TV or whatnot. This is kind of a funny thing. My wife and I were just watching, there's some new movie out on Netflix. I forget what, The Woman of the Hour. And it stars, I think her name is Anna Kendricks. It's her first movie that she's directed. And it takes place in the 70s. And it's a true story about a serial killer. And Anna Kendricks is on the dating game. This is, like I said, the true story about this. And she's writing down her phone number for somebody afterwards. And one of the things I noticed is when I was raised and I learned to write, can I borrow your pencil here for a second?
Absolutely.
Yeah. People my age hold a pen like this. People in, I imagine your age, it's more like this or something.
Oh my God, I've never held a pencil like that in my life.
How do you hold it? There we go. How
I don't know. I don't know if I'm a great example because I do sometimes hold it like that.
See, it's a little different than the way I do.
But I do also hold it like that. It's both. It's like that and that.
But Anna Kendricks is writing the phone number down for somebody, and she's holding it like people hold a pen today. And it was like, boom, pulled me right out of the movie for a second. Now, my wife and I love to look for those little holes. But our job is to plug those holes. So no high fives. We were talking about the inspector in the play. She's referencing something and she does quotes, like Mr. Holmes. Well, we had to research, did people do this in 1936? Because again, there's somebody out there who's going to be sitting in the audience going, that didn't work. And apparently they did, but it was just getting started. It wasn't a big thing. But like in It's a Wonderful Life, my character, a guy named Harry Jasbo Haywood, and we broke the fourth wall before the play started. We had to wander all around the audience and talk to people in our character, and it was just kind of fun. And I walked up to this one guy, and that took place in 1944, and I'm saying, hi, my name's Harry Haywood Jasbo, or Harry Haywood. My friends call me Jasbo. You could do the same. It was my little pattern. And so they would start to respond. Some people would go, you're not really him, you're Scott. And, they didn't quite get it. But but this one person was saying, so what do you do when you're not on stage here in New York? Because the play took place in New York. And I go, I'm a stand-up in Las Vegas. I do stand-up comedy in Las Vegas. And this one guy says, I don't know if you know this or not, but Las Vegas wasn't around in 1944. It was like, oh, shit, you're kidding. Oh, my God, there goes my whole pattern. So I went home and I looked up, and actually it was. But it was new. It was, I think, the first Las Vegas hotel was like 1942 or 43. So technically I fit, but I changed my pattern to be Atlantic City. So that would work. Nice. But it's those little things that we're looking at. So when somebody walks in, everything we talked about, I don't know if we'll pull it off yet, depending on time and budget, having newspapers, headlines from 1936 in the lobby. So when people from the moment they hit the front door to the time they leave the theater, they're immersed in this 1936 feel. And that's what we're all trying to do, from the way the acting is done, the lighting. Everything is all designed to enhance the experience, because people aren't just coming in to stare at a bunch of people walking back and forth on a stage. That's really boring.
Well, you are really creating the world in that sense. And you might not notice all of the pieces when they fit together perfectly in that way, but you definitely notice when one is out of place.
Yeah.
And it pulls you out of the experience. You realize, oh, this isn't it. Now I'm not in the world. I'm a person sitting in the audience watching the play.
Exactly.
Which is what you want to avoid.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just crafting those. I mean, do you guys, when you're taking on a project like this, are you envisioning set direction from the beginning, or are pieces starting to fall into place
from
as
the very
you're working
beginning.
through the process?
I think it's both, combination. Especially when you see the stage you get, that really depends on how it all works out. And also how the actors move around the stage can also determine how the set is too. But with this one in particular, I read the script right away and had ideas pretty much right out of the gate and started coming up with them.
Started researching immediately.
Yeah, and then what we can and cannot do is where it's kind of been formed around that too.
Yeah, the budget, the limitation, and for the last night. So what are we? Today is October 22nd.
It's the 22nd.
22nd, 23rd, whatever. Last night was our first night getting to actually be in the space where the play will be. And we've been rehearsing for 2 months, but for my 70th birthday, I went with my wife to Europe for 3 weeks. So that put everything away. But
Can you
for
believe this guy is 70?
I was going to say, it doesn't look a day over 50.
Oh, God, thanks.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you. I work at it. But we've been rehearsing in a classroom at Jefferson School, which is a closed elementary school, I think. That closed down years ago, and now it's just a community center. So we would get together in a standard classroom and move everything off to the side. They don't have all the chairs there anymore, but they have the tables. And we would say, okay, we're going to put this chair here, and this chair represents the door. And this chair over here, we'll put a couple of chairs together. Now that's a couch. And so last night was our very first time actually being on the stage, and we have, not that anybody's counting, 24 days until we open. So we haven't even got to play on the stage yet. So now that's coming together. So the deadlines we have tape on the floor as of this moment these will be the walls, and I think we put we found an old couch that we put up
temporarily to put there, and some chairs out there.
There's supposed to be a fireplace in the play, and so Kelly, the back of the house manager, prop mistress, if you will, she had an old box from a flat screen TV, so that's now sitting on the wall. That's our fireplace. So, and we have a telephone receiver just sitting there, which is the telephone.
Yeah. I'm actually picking a lot of those props up tomorrow.
So that's what he'll be doing too. So now it starts to come together, and then what we thought worked at Jefferson,
you'll have to tweak.
Yes.
Potentially. When will you guys do full dress rehearsals? Is that like a week out, 2 weeks out?
My goal is, I've been constantly saying to them, I'd really like to do it 2 weeks out to be at that point. So that'd be like November 1st.
Again, though, it's all on her dress.
Well, that I can wear a dress.
Yeah.
And we'll still be running it like show condition. No, I mean, it'll get closer and closer to show conditions as we get. But once we hit November is when we hope to be.
Part of what all the actors and crew made a commitment to when I did auditions was nobody gets to leave town from November 1st to the end of the play, which is December 8th. And there's Thanksgiving in there because my fear was, because this has happened before, Thanksgiving, I'm just going to Reading for the weekend, and then 299 closes. And now what do you do? Because if any one cast member can't make it, again, we're not a big production where we've got understudies, it's the 8 of them on stage and then the stage manager, and that's really what we got. So they all made the commitment not to go. But what I'm trying to do, because there's something called Hell Week, which is actually usually more than a week. It's like the last week before the play opens where you're full show conditions, costumes, lighting, makeup, everything is going. So you do like 5 days of that, and then you launch right into your first weekend. And that's exhausting because you've been working already for by the time
You've been doing the show for a week straight.
And the weeks before, it's not like you've been sitting around and just walk in and go, all right, now let's do it. So my goal is if we can get up to where we want fast enough, and there's a lot of ifs in there, I would like to be able to give them a day off on Hell Week, like the Monday.
And we have to send them home early on Halloween, we've been told.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I don't think Halloween's a Sunday, isn't it?
It's a Thursday.
Thursday.
Oh, it's a Thursday?
Sir.
Oh, we have to send them home. Okay, so.
We were, actors required it this time.
Yeah. So my goal is if we can be all the way up to speed, and a lot of it doesn't depend on the actors, then we'll be into full show conditions by early November, so that by the time the audience sits down, there'll be a preview night November 14th, which is where the cast usually invites friends and family to come see it, and it's basically the last dress rehearsal. But you never know what's going to work until you actually have somebody sitting in the audience. Back to Pintaro, one of the biggest surprises for me was Pintaro, that role that I played was a very serious role. And there was a laugh line in it that I wasn't even aware of. And the first time I had an audience, people were laughing. And I didn't show it on stage, but it's like,
where did that come from?
Yeah, what are they laughing at? This guy's like suicidal, and they're laughing. And one of the people who laughed was a friend of mine. So I asked her afterwards, I said, why were you laughing? She goes, release of tension. And I said, oh, okay. So you don't expect that till you have people sitting in the audience in places where you think they're going to find just hysterical.
And that's the thing, too, about doing a comedy.
Yeah.
When you're doing a comedy, like, this is going to be funny, or like, we're finding this funny. We're having a good time. But when there's a room full of people who laugh when you do the joke, there's so much energy that just like shoots out, and then everybody's like clicking at that point. Like it's another missing factor. Like
it's addictive too.
Yeah, when you get the laughs that you've been like practicing the lines for, doing the bits, whatever, and then it's there, like that's huge. I mean, it's just such a huge part of a comedy show is getting.
And that's a good point too. So let's educate our audience. I don't think a lot of people know that an audience has a lot more influence over a play than they realize. I won't be so bold as to say there are bad audiences, because it's the job of the play to turn an audience good, so that they're engaged. But when an audience comes to a play and they're ready to have a good time or ready to be involved in a drama, in this case, it's just ready to have a night out where they're having a wild old time, they're having a good time, and it's right after elections, which is that unto itself. It's going to add a whole other mix into it.
That's a rehearsal night too.
Yeah, that is. Oh my God. But anyway, and they get engaged, and they laugh and they applaud. It's not just for the vanity of the cast, but as Rachel just said, you feed off that. You go, oh my God, they're having a great time. And you find more energy within. And it's like, all right, let's give it back even more. Not like you ever hold back, but then you give it. It's like, God, they're laughing. How far can I push this? And then they laugh more. And then it becomes a spiral. And a good audience will always get a good performance. A quiet audience will still get a good performance, but it's not quite the same. It's live theater. It's not a movie.
Right, which is exactly what I was going to say. Like I've heard it described to me when I've been backstage, and we're like, damn, this is a quiet audience. Like, man, they're really not doing anything. That, to reassure others, people will often say like, oh, but you know how when you're like at the movies and everyone's having a good time, but they're not necessarily going, ha ha ha, like that is the difference with the theater audience is like, I'm glad you're enjoying yourself, but this is the place, this is the venue where it's like, just do it out loud, like, because it's going to improve everybody's experience. Like everyone has a good time when you're surrounded by people who are laughing. And then actors, like there's this book that I was loaned to me by a friend who's also in this theater community, Todd Hobrecht. And in it, there's a section where the author is talking about like actors. I mean, almost generally, you could say, have insecurity in terms of like,
No.
like actors thrive on praise. Like it's you want to be doing a good performance, and so you want that feedback, and so just like getting praise from the audience in the form of like, I don't know, responding to the emotion that you're trying to elicit is where that energy comes from. You're like feeling like, okay, like they're connecting. I'm delivering the performance that they want. I'm delivering the performance that I want to give, and it just amps it up.
Yeah.
They're along for the ride. They're not just passive.
They're actually partially driving, because they're encouraging it's live theater. We hear when we're on the stage what the audience is doing. Like on the other end of that, people in the audience who are talking. You hear that on the stage, and it's distracting. You can't let it break what you're doing because you have to be fair to the rest of the audience over this boorish asshole, but you get people who, to get on their cell phone and they're busy. It doesn't happen very often, but it's enough to throw you off. Or people walk across the stage to go to the bathroom or something, and so you got another cast member suddenly.
Or people showing up 10 minutes after the shows began.
Yeah,
because it's not a movie. There's not previews before it.
Yeah, like at our theater, one of the policies we've had to put into place is we sadly will not let people in after the show starts because, again, it's not a movie. And in our theater being smaller, we also, Sweeney Todd was notorious for this. I don't know if notorious is the word, but using the aisles in the audience. Not all entrances are from the back of the curtain. You got people coming down the aisles, and our place starts out in an aisle too. So if you got somebody wandering down an aisle while an actor's trying to get where they have to get, it doesn't work. So, but yeah, good audience. So we're putting out a request. We'd like good audiences, please. We promise we'll give you a good show if you're a good audience. We promise we'll give you a good show if you're a bad audience, but a better show if you're a good audience.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you brought that up, that I wonder how much movies have come into play in that audience feedback sense. Because if you're laughing or being obnoxious in a movie theater, it's completely different than if you're in an actual theater and the whole crowd's laughing and you're feeding into the environment.
And in a movie, the other people around you are thinking you're an ass, but the people on the screen aren't. In this case, it can be distracting. I remember doing one play where there was somebody who had way too much to drink. And it was a murder mystery. I tend to be involved in a lot of murder mysteries. And she's in the back and she's screaming, "Go get him, you know who it is." And it's like, please, I don't need the coaxing, And if I remember correctly, the house manager, who's the person who handles the front of the house, it's what I do a lot, had to go in and say, you need to quiet down or step out, because not only are you disrupting it for the other people, but you're having, as an actor, you're having to pause for them to scream over you, and that doesn't work. The other thing that's fun about laughing is a friend taught me when I was a speaker what's called the laughter wave. And now that as I describe this to you, you'll hear it. When people start to laugh, it starts at the front of the theater and it crests about 3/4 of the way back, and then it goes down. So you have to learn as an actor, don't step on the laugh, because then people will stop laughing because they want to hear every word you say. But don't let it go so long that the laughter has stopped. So people laugh, ah, and you wait till you hear it peak, and just as it starts to come down, then you do your next line. So that way everybody's basically heard it. And that was something I had never realized until I was in speaking. And now, I don't know if you're familiar with the laughter wave. But
holding for the laugh.
They call it holding for a laugh, but you can hear when the sound,
cross.
Yeah, you can hear when it's going to cross. And you go, okay, I'll be quiet.
Yeah, definitely.
And you said you've been up here for a year?
Well, I've been up here. In January, it'll be 3 years. But I've been acting in this community, my first acting was like in February of last year, or just before that. I did a dinner theater murder mystery, funnily enough.
And you come from Chicago, right?
I moved here from Chicago. That's right.
But no prior acting in Chicago.
No. I've done community theater before,
okay.
But it was I've only been acting in this community since last summer. I did the Short Play Festival last year. It was my first acting like on a stage here. Yeah.
Is there a significant difference coming from a place like Chicago to a smaller market like this?
I didn't actually do any acting in Chicago. I did acting in Central Illinois, which is where I'm from. When I was living in Chicago, I moved to Chicago in 2019, and then I was there through the pandemic, and everything was shut down.
Yeah. Little chaotic.
Yeah. It was very intense being in a city. But yeah, I mean, everything shut down. It was super, super locked down. I would have loved to be involved in theater in Chicago, and hopefully maybe that's in my future. But yeah, I would say community theater, and from my previous experience, is generally it's the same in that, like, we are all just here because we love doing this. Like, we don't get paid. Nobody gets paid to do this. Everybody is just like, I really believe in the idea of, like, this is an ancient human tradition, is storytelling. We've been telling stories for basically as long as we've been able to communicate in some fashion with each other. And to just be part of that tradition of playing with each other, telling stories with each other, and telling stories to other people, is we're really tapped into something much bigger than ourselves, and it's very special. Not everybody does it. Not everybody is compelled to play like this, tell stories like this. But the people who are all over the country, whether you're working professionally or you're working in community theater, or you're just working with your friends, like in the garage, it's like you're really just pursuing that storytelling and bringing something to life to entertain or teach or both. And yeah, I think it's a very special kind of community to be a part of, is the theater community. Just creative people generally, but specifically the theater community in Illinois and in California are just full of people who love doing this, who love telling stories and love entertaining other people.
And it's very inclusive. I mean, the creative community is known for being outside the norm, if you will, although I technically think all of society is a creative community. Just some people become more in touch with it. Or we have, I think, an accountant who does a great job on lining up all the spreadsheet columns. That's creative too. It's just we all express it in a different way. But it's a very inclusive community. It's emotional because you're getting kind of emotionally naked out there a lot of times. So you get to really know these people. You develop strong bonds with them. And you're with them a lot to the point of volunteering. By the time a play ends, let's say there's 2 months of rehearsal, and then
I think that the standard is like 6 weeks.
Yeah, 6 weeks. So you're dealing with, we're doing 3 hours a night. Right now we're up to 4 nights a week. We were doing 3 nights a week. So whatever that is, that's 12 hours a week for a month. So you got 50 hours put in there, and let's say 50 hours the week before. Plus you're learning lines. Poor Stephen, he's got over 300 lines in this play, and he's killing it. But that's a lot of lines. The most I've ever had was like 250 or something, and that was difficult. So you're putting in all this time. You're having to learn lines. You're coming back to try on costumes.
You're working a day job.
Yeah, you're working.
Everybody's just working regularly.
Yeah, again, you're not getting paid for this.
Yeah, exactly. And then the play comes up, and the play goes, like our plays start at 8. Matinees start at 2, but our plays start at 8, and this play will probably be about 2 hours, I think, when it all said and done.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's going to be 2, including the intermission. Yeah, maybe 2:15.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like it's going to be quick. I mean, we just haven't put it together, so there's no way of really knowing. But I think it's going to be like a tight, if it's going to be 2 hours, it's going to be a tight 2 hours.
Well, there's also the half-hour intermission for everybody to use the bathroom because
we have a half-hour intermission.
Well, no, we don't, but everybody's trying to use the bathroom. So it becomes that. Or we have people walking across the stage going into the bathroom. But let's say 2 hours, let's say it's only 2 hours. Well, you're there, the play starts at 8, call, the time you get there is 6:30. So that's 3.5 hours. You don't just leave right at 10. You know, you got to take off your costume, your makeup, the whole thing. So you're putting in 5 hours a night, a few nights a week on top of that. And then there's what's called the pickup rehearsal. So if we open again, if we're Friday, Saturday, Sunday, all the actors come in and they rehearse again on Thursday because they've been off for 4 days. So it's like, all right, here we go. Let's do a quick rehearsal on Thursday. So they're putting in easily 100 hours or so to do this at, again, no pay. So applaud.
Well, you got to love it.
Yeah.
You got to love it to be putting in that much work.
Mm-hmm. Let's just, I mean, science of the mind, Scott. I'm just going to say, like, somehow, you know, how we had the Civilian Conservation Corps. Let's get the government involved in this. Let's support community theater, all kinds of community art across the country and fund it. Let's just, we all get money for this.
Yeah. And there we go. And so it begins and into the universe. And so it is, you know, which is the standard close on one of those. But yeah, it's a great community. And this area is really well stocked in creative people. I mean, it's always been consistently, that sentence didn't make sense. It's consistently been one of the higher rated small towns in terms of art. I mean, what you're doing is an art. You know, yours is a spoken word thing. But, you know, the number of galleries, and, you know, my wife is an artist, Dan's an artist on top of doing this. There's singers all over the place. I mean, this is a community of 40,000 people, and we've got 4 theaters, I think.
When I first moved here, I heard from several different people that this is like the highest per capita ratio of artists in the United States or something.
Yeah, there was a book, I want to say it was the early 2000s, and maybe they still publish it, The Top Art Towns in the United States, and Eureka was consistently included in the top 10, and I think 1 or 2 years it was number 1. And it was based on number of artists per capita.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, but started out with a bunch of old hippies moving up here who were doing creative stuff, smoking dope, and now they're just smoking dope and they got older, you know. And now it's legal, so it works out fine. Yeah. But yeah, it's a very artistic community. And the people who come to the shows tend to be people who come back over and over and over again.
Yeah, it's good to have that local support, which I think is definitely ingrained in the community up here.
And to the point of financial support, that's shout out to Calder for all the, you know, he kept us afloat during COVID. I mean, just, you know, no audiences, no shows, you know, and like I said, theaters closing all over, and Calder dug through every nook and cranny to find grants and funding and kept us alive during that period. So there's a special type of talent right there.
Well, community theater especially is important. I mean, it's a very communal experience when you're sitting out there. It's different than a movie. It's different than even going to a concert. There's just something about being in that room and seeing whatever scene unfold in front of you that you just don't get that anywhere else. And to lose that, I mean, would just be devastating for communities across the country.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for doing this. Do you want to plug where people, when the show's actually up, how they can come see you guys, how they can provide
Do you already have a ticket?
I don't.
Yeah,
you could do that on air right now if you wanted to.
You guys have them online?
Yeah, they're online.
At NCRT, North Coast Repertory Theater.net, but we'll comp you in. You gave us some publicity, and I have connections. But yeah, and I also want to do, when will this actually go live? Will it be in October or will it be in November?
It'll be pretty quick. I think I might have 2 or 3 ahead of you guys.
Okay. Because if it goes in October, I also want to put a plug in for the Haunted Rail Tour, which is taking place right now.
That's
it's on Samoa. It originally started as a function of NCRT and 2 other entities, and you were like a director last year in that, weren't you?
I was a stage manager.
Yeah, stage. Yeah. And it's an amazing production out at in Samoa. for the holidays, and it's a bunch of creative folks putting that on. It's kind of moved into its own beast at hauntedrailtour.com, but it's still under the umbrella of NCRT. So I want to also plug that. It goes through Halloween, I think.
Yes, the Halloween night will be obviously like the big night for that. Big shout out to Jaden and Jordan, who are like creative team on this, and like they are also mainstays of the local community theater scene. Jordan and Jaden were both in Scott's Pintaro
they were my
scene
partners in Pintaro,
and friends of mine, and they are wildly talented people and taking charge of this this year.
So I wanted to shout out for that, and that's at hauntedrailtour.com. But as for our play, The Game's Afoot, a Sherlock Holmes festive holiday comedic murder mystery romp, which opens November 15th and runs through December 8th, Friday and Saturday nights at 8 o'clock, Sundays at 2. The only thing I also like to point out is the second Sunday, so that'll be the 15th, 16th, the 24th of November is masks required because we help the immunocompromised on that particular day, but the rest of the time masks are not required. And tickets are $20 for adults, $18 for older adults and for students, and you can get them at NCRT. It's going to be just a wild, fun evening that you just don't want to miss. It's just a perfect holiday celebration. The Game's Afoot with Rachel Houska. Your last name's pronounced Houska, right?
That's right.
Because when I tried to call you on Siri, it wanted to change your last name.
Oh, did it try to say Houska?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, that's classic.
And then I'd like to plug, I have an art show going on at Frankie's Bagels at Redwood Acres. So if you guys like very bright colored art, please come check my stuff out there.
There we go. Yeah, Frankie's Bagels at Redwood Acres.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else to promote. I'm just, this is my whole thing. I might come back at you for the holiday giveaway that we're doing, or the decoration giveaway that we're doing at the Center for Spiritual Living, where we just give away free decorations to anybody who needs them. But this is for NCRT, North Coast Repertory Theater, part of 5th and D Theater on 5th and D.
And come out and support local theater.
Yes, exactly.
Should be a great show. I'm excited to see it.
We're going to put on a great show for you.
Yeah, we will.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Nick.
Thank you.